Welcome to the League of Women Voters Tacoma-Pierce County Candidate Forum for Legislative District 29, Position 2. I'm Lydia Zapeta, the moderator for the forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County, I welcome you to this forum, and I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement. The League of Women Voters Tacoma-Pierce County acknowledges that we gather on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples, surrounded by their traditional waters in the shadow of Mount Tahoma. We actively seek inclusive and respectful partnerships that honor Indigenous cultures, histories, identities, and current realities. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose mission for the past 106 years has been to empower informed and active participation of citizens in government. Candidate forums are one of the many ways that we do this. Visit our website for more information, lwvtpc.org. We invited all the candidates for Position 2 for the Legislative District 29. The candidates in ballot order are Derek Blum, Patrick Stickney, Erin Chapman-Smith, Natasha Laitila, Sherry Hayes, and Joe Bushnell. The primary is August 4th. To register to vote or to change your address, go to votewa.gov. That's votewa.gov by Monday, July 27th. If you're already a registered voter, your ballot will be mailed on July 14th. Your ballot must be postmarked or placed in a ballot drop box by 8 p.m. on Tuesday, August 4th. The form is being recorded and will be posted on our website, lwvtpc.org. Questions have been prepared by the League of Women Voters Tacoma-Pierce County. We invite audience questions via text at 253-948-6029. That's 253-948-6029. It's right there on the screen. Questions must be directed to all candidates and may be reworded or consolidated. Our timekeeper today is Terry Baker. Candidates, please stay on gallery view so that you can see the timer. When your time is up, please stop. You may finish your sentence, but it has to be a short sentence, or I will interrupt you. Please don't talk unless it's your turn. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. The audience is muted and they cannot use the chat function. A reminder that civility is expected. I ask you all to confirm that you agree to our ground rules for this forum. Among other things, these ground rules include addressing the issues and not making personal comments about anyone. Please confirm by giving me a thumbs up, and I'd like to see all those thumbs ups. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Each candidate has up to 2 minutes for an opening statement. After that, the order of each question will rotate and each candidate will be asked the same question. At the end, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. The order of the opening 2-minute statements for LD 29 Position 2 is in ballot order. So we'll start with Patrick Stickney. Your opening statement, please.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. My name is Patrick Stickney, running for 29th State Representative Position 2, and I'm running so that families of all backgrounds have what they need for a better life. I come from a low-income family that struggled with the impacts of substance use and domestic violence, and at a basic level, I know how it feels to not be able to keep up, to not be able to get out of a bad situation while life keeps piling on. The decisions coming from Olympia can help or hurt people that are just trying to do the best they can to provide for themselves and their families. The 29th needs someone who will fight for working families and for more resources for our district. I know how making big changes require big coalitions, and I'll draw on my experience as an attorney, policy advisor, working every day around the legislature, and community organizer to make sure that working people are at the table and that we move policy forward in a way that addresses their needs. This includes doing things like addressing rising costs by expanding childcare programs, going after hidden fees, stopping our data from being used to charge us more for things at the grocery store, and tackling the lack of competition that's raising prices for all of us. It also means doing everything we can to keep housing costs down, and also expanding collective bargaining, making sure that folks have good wages, good jobs, and dignity in the workplace. And the state also has to be thorough and creative in protecting our residents, using our inherent authority to the maximum extent possible. I'm proud to say that I'm supported by our county and legislative district Democrats and organizations like the State Labor Council, Washington Education Association, Washington State Nurses Association, and I earn these endorsements because they trust me to put working people first and to work for the benefit of all of our communities. I have family members who are being laid off, who are having trouble accessing resources, and who are working to improve their own financial stability. Especially in the tough times ahead in the legislature, we will need to fight to make sure we can get the policies and resources we need as a district and as a state. Thank you, and I'm grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you. Erin Chapman-Smith, please, your 2-minute statement.
Good evening, everybody. Again, I'm Erin Chapman-Smith and running for state representative here on the 29th. I'm grateful for the opportunity to introduce myself. I was born and raised here in the Tacoma area and have spent the last 20 years working in nonprofit services and really leading coalitions on the front line of the homelessness crisis. I'm currently the executive director of the largest emergency shelter for young adults here in Washington State. And again, I've spent the last 2 decades really working at that intersectionality of policy and the impacts of real life. My campaign is really focused on local affordability, strengthening education and affordable housing, and really making sure that our local workers and families have a strong voice in Olympia that also has the experience needed on the ground to make actual change in our community. I'm also supported by many local leaders, state representatives, and senators like Senator, excuse me, Senator Tina Orwell, Nicole Macri, and many more. I've also been endorsed by the WEA, Stand for Children, and again, many other local nonprofits and local coalitions. I am really running because I'm a parent. I have a special needs child who is in the Tacoma School District, and we've had significant challenges. And so really working to provide families and workers and our citizens a strong voice in Olympia that has their back, that's really focused on our local economy, really making sure that, especially as we're going into what is predicted to be one of the most challenging budget years in the state history, that we have someone who understands how policy actually impacts folks in the real world and can make those changes. I am, again, so grateful for the opportunity to introduce myself and look forward to the questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Natasha Laitila, would you please give your 2-minute statement?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Natasha Laitila, and I'm running for Washington State Representative, position 2 in the 29th LD. I am a product of this district. I was born and raised in the 29th LD, and I have received the majority of my education here. I'm a product of the Tacoma Public School District as well. I had the privilege of also attending and graduating from Pacific Lutheran University, which is in the district. Our district has some of the lowest voter turnout rates in the state, and oftentimes people say this as a statement and not as something that is an issue that needs to be addressed. And as someone who has grown up here, can personally attest that there are reasons as to why we have such low voter turnout rates. And a big part of it is people feel frustrated, disillusioned, and not feeling like they are part of the process. So that encouraged me to go into public service. And I have worked across all 3 branches of Washington state government, including both chambers of the state House and Senate. And through my professional experience, I have implemented policies at various levels of government. And what I want to bring is that personal connection to the district and really understanding the differences between incorporated Tacoma, South Tacoma, and unincorporated Pierce County. And also through the connections and the experience I have at the state level of implementing policy, not in a reactive way, but in a proactive way. I am running on economic stability, so that people can afford to stay here, afford groceries, childcare, healthcare, protecting our immigrant communities and also our neighborhoods so that children and families feel safe living here, and also standing up for workers. I am endorsed by WEA, AFT, and also other representatives. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Joe Bushnell, your 2-minute statement.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Bushnell, and I'm currently honored to serve as the Deputy Mayor of the City of Tacoma. I was born and raised here in the City of Tacoma. I'm a graduate of Stadium High School, and my mother actually came to the United States as a refugee from Cambodia, and I lived all over the district, including in the Salishan neighborhood in the east side of Tacoma as a child. The reason why I'm running is because I love our community. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to improve a lot of the conditions in which we find ourselves in here locally. And I really want to bring my experience at the local level to the legislature. I've found that time and time again, as I try to be creative with local policy solutions to support our members of our community, the state legislature has laws that block, prevent, or not allow for certain things that would be really beneficial for members of our community. Um, it's been really incumbent upon me to make sure that our community is served and served well, and I make sure to listen to all stakeholders when making decisions on behalf of our community, even those that might disagree with me. Unfortunately, I don't think that there's a lot of folks in the legislature that are doing that currently, and that's the kind of experience I want to bring to the legislature. I also served in the United States Marine Corps. Service to me is one of the highest callings a person can make. And so I also did a lot of work at the local level with neighborhood councils, as well as other different community groups, volunteering in multiple different capacities. I am very much a product of our community here, and I really believe that service to others is really important. That's why I want to continue to serve in this new way, and be able to bring the local experience. Members of our community are struggling right now for healthcare access, food access, affordability, as well as public safety is a prime concern for many members of our community. And the legislature does have a very large role to play in supporting all those efforts. And I don't think that they're doing good enough to support those at the local level that have the highest quality of level impact on our communities. Thank you.
Thank you all. Now it's time for questions. Each candidate will get 90 seconds to answer each question, and you'll all be answering the same questions. Again, live audience can text to this number here on the screen if they have questions. The candidate order will rotate and with each question. So for question number 1, I'll start with Erin Chapman-Smith. The first question is, the state of Washington has a projected budget deficit of $4.3 billion for 2027-29 biennium. Be specific about how you will close the gap. How will you raise revenues, and what cuts would you support? Erin Chapman-Smith.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, like I said in my opening statement, we are facing just an incredibly challenging budget year, $4+ billion. We have to continue to raise revenue. That is part of where we find ourselves as a state. I'm in support of the millionaire's tax. That revenue doesn't come in for the next 3 years. We have to continue to really look at opportunities to really address the regressive taxes here in Washington state. I think that there is really great opportunities across the state for different taxes that really impact those who are making more, millionaires, big businesses. I am in favor of vacancy taxes. I'm in favor of, again, addressing the regressive taxes. Where we are really primed to make sure that we can protect the 29th is in what we are cutting. And what I like to answer that question is by saying what we're not going to cut. We have to protect the most vulnerable in our community. We have to protect our healthcare. We have to protect our mental health resources, our housing subsidies. One of the ways we can do that is by really looking at prevention options and looking at what saves money in the long run. Housing does that. Really making sure folks can live here helps with that in the long run.
Thank you. Natasha Laitila.
Yes, so this is a very big question and really affects the 29th because the majority of residents here are working class and low income. So I think a big reason that we are in this situation is because of our regressive tax structure. I am a proponent of the millionaire's tax, but also, as was stated, we're not going to see that revenue for a couple years. And I think we need to be really looking at other progressive revenue streams. So specific excise taxes on luxury goods, for example, or looking at tax incentives that are outdated, or tax preferences that aren't meeting what their original purposes were, closing other tax loops. I think that is something we need to look at, and I am very hesitant about saying what we need to cut, because we are in a district where we have resource deserts. And when it comes to education and other resources and housing, so I want to have really thoughtful conversations about what that's going to look like. Another thing also that's
Cory,
often
could
talked
you help
about.
me? I do not know how to forward this message, which is just
Excuse me,
bizarre.
Noel, could you please
I
mute
just
yourself?
received a text,
Noel, please.
and I know I need to open.
I'm so sorry, Natasha.
Okay. I think that stopped at around 15
Sorry.
seconds.
Okay, go right ahead. Sorry.
Okay. And just to quickly wrap up, another thing that often is talked about being cut is public service workers. And that's the last thing I think we need to talk about cutting, as that also further exacerbates our issues. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So sorry about that.
That's okay.
Joe Bushnell, how would you close the gap? How would you raise revenues, and what cuts would you support?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I think that this is really an important topic of conversation. This is something that we're grappling with as a city in a lot of local jurisdictions, is budget deficits. And it's something that really requires really hard conversations. I think it's important for this legislature to really look introspectively first at and using data-driven decision-making in order to make sure that the tax dollars that we are spending have maximum value, and any underperforming programs might see some reallocation or reshuffling. I think it's really important that we use data to help support that effort, and making sure that our prime responsibility is to support public education. That's a constitutional mandate. And so I want to make sure that our constitutional mandate is for sure funded appropriately, and fully funded as per our constitution. It's really important also that as we're looking at raising revenues, we're looking at ways to reduce the burden on those in our community that are most impacted by regressive taxes. I would like to see some wholesale reductions in sales taxes. I think that is one of the most regressive ways that we are taxing in this state. And I think we need a really comprehensive look at our entire tax structure. I'm hoping that with the millionaire's tax pass, and I suspect a lawsuit and all these other things that are going to go on, that we'll have some more clarity on what is allowed and not allowed. But I think a real comprehensive restructuring of our tax code and reducing the regressivity is going to be extremely important. But we cannot talk about additional revenues without talking about the reductions on the regressivity of it, because our people are being taxed significantly.
Thank you. Patrick Stickney, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll first start with revenue, because I do think it's both sides in the difficult situation we're going to be in, and for me it is looking at a wealth tax for highest earners, and it is reversing the decrease in the estate tax for high earners that occurred when the millionaire's tax passed. That's a lot of money that was left on the table, and I think that making sure that we are asking the wealthy to pay their fair share is important. I do think too that we need to make sure that we are being more creative in how state agencies do submit funding requests. A lot of times there might be different agencies that are kind of doing the same thing, and making sure that they can work together as they are doing these funding requests, I think, is really important to see where we can get these efficiencies. Seeing that the pressure cooker of legislative session, where it's going to be a couple of months, I think that some of these long-term goals are going to be a little bit difficult in terms of trying to do having a stable budget moving forward. I think we can start in this next session, but it's going to be a number of years before we're able to do that. And so for me, it is making sure we are protecting the services that our district relies on in terms of housing, in terms of food security, in terms of healthcare, making sure that we are able to get the job opportunities here. I think that that's another big thing, is thinking about the revenue that will be generated by creating more jobs, and a job package, I think, is really important.
Thank you. Next question. We'll start with Natasha Laitila. Folks in the Legislative District 29 have lower incomes and a higher poverty rate than the rest of Washington. Given that Washington State has the second most regressive state tax system in the union, This means that constituents of the 29th district pay a higher rate, a tax rate, than any other Washingtonians. What do you propose to do to make the tax burden fairer for low-income folks? Natasha Laitila.
Thank you. Yeah, what you have stated is true, right? And as someone who is a product of the district of the 29th legislative district, I also have very personal ties and experience to this. I have in this campaign hit over 6,000 doors in our district because we need to meet residents where they are at when it comes to representation and hearing directly from them. And what I hear over and over again as one example is the gas tax. So our district specifically, because of its lack of infrastructure, especially in unincorporated Pierce County like Parkland and Spanaway and Frederickson and Midland, people rely heavily on their cars, and they do not have access to public transportation. And so the gas tax is something that if we are able to broaden upon and look at more progressive revenue streams, that's one way to address affordability and immediate affordability for our residents. Another is also addressing the sales tax because when it comes to food and other necessities, the residents in the 29th LD are more severely impacted and further addresses the affordability crisis. So the sales tax and the gas tax are two things that I would address and look into.
Thank you. Joe Bushnell, please.
Great. Thank you for this. Kind of to follow up on my comments earlier, I think there needs to be wholesale reductions on sales taxes. As I'd mentioned earlier, it's one of the most regressive ways to raise revenues from the state level. And I think that'll be the largest way that to lift people out of cost burden situations. The cost to purchase anything is so much higher for those that don't have the means to afford anything. And it's really important that we have a really serious conversation about the regressivity of our sales taxes. Additionally, I think it's important that we're utilizing CCA dollars to support green infrastructure changes within the 29th LD. As been mentioned before, transportation costs are significant for members of our district. Many people not only just take cars, but they also take public transit in order to get to work all across this district. And it's really important that we have the green infrastructure supported at different charging stations, subsidies so folks can purchase electric vehicles, and other ways that we can get people around to their jobs and to their healthcare or to their groceries. It's also important that we continue to support the working families tax credit, so that way households are able to survive a lot of the challenges that we're facing in affordability, as well as expanding our senior property tax exemption. Just because the cost of goods and prices of everything is going up, many of our seniors are on fixed incomes right now, and those prices don't keep up with their ability to continue to live in the properties and homes that they stay in. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Stickney.
Yes, thank you. I think sales taxes is definitely what we need to look at. That food is not currently not taxed, and with the millionaires tax that was passed, we're able to get tax exemptions on personal hygiene products, which was something that was really good. And that I think we need to look at, especially more thinking about those products that people are using, and where can we put in those sales tax reductions on property taxes. That is one of the things that I hear from about folks the most, especially seniors on fixed incomes. And so expanding the senior property tax exemption, there already is going to be an expansion coming soon. And so seeing what we can build on top of that, or a homestead exemption, I think would be important for folks' personal homes, making sure that we are then also putting in so changes to create a more stable property tax structure, because currently we don't know how much our property taxes are going to increase from year to year. And I think having that stability is really important. And then working on public transportation, making sure that we are providing alternatives for people to get to where they need to go to get those essential goods, and those essential parts of their life, I think is really important as well. So really looking at all of the above, and I think also making sure we're getting those more funding, more opportunities for our district to be able to do that. We don't have as many resources or get as many resources as other districts, and so making sure we're getting that funding here is paramount.
Thank you. Erin Chapman-Smith, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with a lot of what's been shared already. I think there is a lot of things that we can do here in the district property taxes at the top of my list. I think that helps with housing affordability first and foremost, including for renters where those costs are passed on. I think we can look at targeted gas tax relief. However, some of that funds does support our transportation work and our kind of roads, and so I want to make sure that we don't offset and create a larger problem as well. I think we also can look at actually expanding the working families tax credit to make sure that folks know about the eligibility. Tax doesn't really do folks or tax credit doesn't do folks good if they don't know how to access that. So I think looking at all of those, including sales tax, there are some really targeted ways we can reduce sales tax to make sure that we are making those basic needs kind of expanded so that folks are able to afford those. I'm especially thinking folks on fixed incomes, folks with disabilities, parents, families. There's a lot of different impacts there that we can have by reducing the sales tax.
Thank you. Next question. We will start with Joe Bushnell. 17% of the residents of the LD 29 are foreign born, a higher percentage of immigrants than Washington State or the United States. Would you support reintroduction of Senate Bill 5906, the SAFE Act, proposed by the Attorney General to protect sensitive locations from immigration enforcement? These sensitive locations include daycares, schools, healthcare, and courthouses. Explain your position. Joe Bushnell, please.
So I'll say yes, and we've already taken action at the city of Tacoma. We just recently passed a ban on any kind of immigration enforcement on city of Tacoma property. So I would support this bill if it did come before me. It's really important to make sure that people of all people, and especially our immigrant community, have safe places to take their kids, to go to school, to worship, and to do all the things that are what make America an amazing place to live. As a child of a refugee, it's very important to me to make sure that our immigrant community is represented well, and that their voices, even if they are not eligible to vote, are also heard. And I've been a part of the ANHPI community here on the city council, and particularly in the Cambodian community, who I represent significantly all across the state. And we've had more Cambodians in council chambers than there ever have been in the city history. And I want to be able to bring that kind of energy to the legislature. I want to see more representation from our immigrant community in the halls of power. Because if you don't have a seat at the table, then you are on the dinner plate. And so I think it's really important to make sure that our immigrant communities are supported in all ways. And I've been doing that on the city council, and I would continue to do that at the state legislature.
Thank you. Patrick Stickney, please.
Yes, thank you. 100% support it, but I do want to put in a nuance is some of the things. So as context, I work for the State Office of Equity in my day job doing the policy and legislative work. And as part of that, we coordinate the governor's immigration subcabinet. So a lot of these bills I was working on in the last session, I think this bill is a really important one that unfortunately didn't get through. One of the big things that I heard from organizations is that the frontline staff who are immigrants themselves, who have to worry about their status, the way that the bill was as written was going to put too much of a burden on them in terms of as they're worried about their own status, trying to protect other folks as well. And so I think that, a reintroduced bill that incorporates those concerns, make sure that it is able to be implemented and is able to be implemented in a way that is safe for everybody is really important. So with those changes, I would support the bill. There's a lot of other bills that didn't get through last legislative session that I think are really important, such as allowing the Department of Health to have finding authority for the Northwest Detention Center when they refuse access to the Department of Health for health and safety inspections, and as just as an example, and making sure that there are protections for our first responders who are actively fighting fires, and responding to those situations who are immigrants themselves is really important. And there's a number of other ones as well. So we definitely need to keep on working on this. Yes, 100%.
Erin Chapman-Smith, please.
Simply, yes, I would absolutely support that. I, again, am the executive director of the state's largest emergency shelter for young adults, and we see this all the time. We serve folks from all different backgrounds, all different countries, immigrants, folks who are fleeing domestic violence. What we see on the ground daily is the impacts of this. And like was shared, I think there is room for some amendments and some strategic changes to make sure that those who are working on that ground level are really able to also have protection and really make sure that they are in safe spaces and we're not relying on those providing basic care to our citizens and our community to make really hard decisions and really scary decisions when they're up against federal law enforcement. I think there is, again, like was shared, some really great expansion that can happen under this with the Northwest Detention Center. Emily Randall, Representative Randall is really championing that and really supporting that work. And I'd like to see that expanded as well.
Thank you. Natasha Laitila, please.
Hi, yes, I definitely would support this bill, and it's very disappointing that it wasn't passed. This is something that's also very, very personal to me. My mother is an immigrant from Malaysia, and a lot of the students, the kids, the communities that I grew up in here in the 29th were our immigrant families. And from the 6,000 plus doors that I've knocked, it's devastating to when someone gingerly and is scared to open the door because they think that I am potentially, ICE, for example. So and immigrants include people who are undocumented, people who have refugee status, working visas, student visas, people who are green card holders. And I also want to expand protections at the state level. And the fact that we still have a detention center is honestly disgusting, and it's a concentration camp, and we need to really address and figure out how to address the rights that are being squashed on with people who are being kept there and visiting people. This is something that needs to be addressed at the state level, and so yes, I will support the bill, and more has to be done at the state level.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Patrick Stickney. The LD29 has a higher percentage, 10.5% of the population are veterans, and it's higher than Washington State or the US. What is your priority for legislation for veterans? Patrick Stickney.
Yeah, thank you. I come from a military family. My father was a service member. My grandfather, making sure that we're supporting military families is really important. And I think part of it is making sure that we are tackling mental health issues. We're providing that support, especially everything, doing everything we can to as the service degrades at the federal level, as there are obstacles that are put in the way to having our veterans receive care. Making sure that we are providing that support, doing everything we can to support folks here is for me the top of the priority list. To make sure that we're able to really make sure we're protecting folks here in all the different ways as we are seeing multiple failures from the federal government.
Thank you. Erin Chapman-Smith.
Yeah, I agree that expansion of mental health services is absolutely critical. I think it goes farther with physical health as well, and making sure that our veterans have the opportunity to connect with all of the resources and benefits that they're eligible for across the community, not just through the VA. I also think that there is a high intersectionality with homelessness and veterans. And so really making sure that our providers here in the 29th and across the community have the tools they need to address veteran homelessness, which is often very different from single adult homelessness or youth and young adult homelessness. And so making sure that we're embedding those resources. I also think that the military does a great job. I also come from a military family. My grandfather was a surgeon in the Navy. I think that there is a lot of really great training that happens while in the military. And so as folks transition out of military service, making sure that those professional and occupational licenses transfer and are easier to maintain for folks moving from military service back into civilian population.
Thank you, Natasha Laitila.
Yes. So the 29th does have a significant veteran population, and I think the two biggest things is would be regarding with housing affordability, and also healthcare and specifically behavioral health. When it comes to the high costs of both of those, especially for a population that has dedicated their life to service and to serving our country, I believe that we need to offer more resources and accessibility to those resources in our district and for our residents here. And that again is looking at more affordable housing or access to affordable housing, especially as veterans are in retirement. And also, as I said, access to behavioral health, mental health, and also overall just healthcare as with shortening waiting times, and also looking into being able for them to have access to other forms of treatment that meet the specific needs that they may have.
You're muted, but I think you called on me, so I'll go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yes. Go ahead, Joe Bushnell.
Thank you. So thank you for having this question, one, because it's not often that this is a question that's asked during these candidate forums. I am a veteran myself, a disabled veteran of the Marine Corps of over 11 years. I was actually stationed in JBLM most recently in the reserves. I have very close with a lot of veteran communities and veteran members of our community here in the 29th. I'm also a life member of the VFW. So one of the big priorities I would have is making sure that we're holding accountable any predatory benefit sharks that are all out there preying upon veterans that are looking for their benefits. It's a really significant problem that I think is under talked about. I also believe that there is some opportunity for increased workforce certification, cross certification, especially for spouses of veterans and military and current military personnel. There's a lot of folks that have got really good education in other states and coming to work at JBLM, but are unable to continue to work because their certifications are not validated here in the state of Washington. So I'd like to see more of those cross certifications be included. And then acutely, as well as childcare, access to childcare, both for our active duty and veteran services. A lot of us are, are starting families and or have families, and childcare access, and especially when you're on duty for 24 hours a day, is very difficult. And so I think it's really important to make sure that we have childcare access for both veterans and our active duty military personnel that are living in our area, as well as the acute cost of housing, which has been mentioned before, is really making it difficult for many military families and veterans.
Thank you. Next question is an audience question, and we'll start with Erin Chapman-Smith. If elected, how would you stay connected to constituents throughout your term and make yourself accessible to people who don't typically participate in politics? Erin Chapman-Smith.
That's a great question, and one of the things that I do every day working in nonprofits. It's built into all of our models. I really pride myself on having 2 decades of track record behind this of being connected. In my work, I am known as one of the people you can always reach out to. We also made an intentional choice in this campaign. The phone number on the PDC goes to my personal cell phone. And so I am always available to constituents for better or for worse. And I think one of the ways that we actually are good legislators is by being connected. And so it's not something that I've ever shied away from in my work or personal life. And I'm looking forward to continuing that in Olympia. I think there are lots of different models. I think you have to utilize all of them. Not every kind of person in the community needs different levels of access and types of access. So holding a town hall isn't enough, right? So there's really great examples. Like Representative Reeves has a weekly coffee hour in addition to her town halls, and I think finding those ways that resonate with the community and then making sure that those are consistently part of your schedule, and actually spending time and being in the district, working with folks here and reaching out is absolutely critical.
Thank you. Natasha Laitila.
Yeah, because the 29th has such a low voter turnout rate, this is very critical to be able to be connected to constituents. As I said, I've knocked on over 6,000 doors in this campaign so far, meeting with residents, and a lot of people are surprised, especially in unincorporated Pierce County, like Parkland and Midland, for example, where I'm either the first person that has knocked on their door, or they are very shocked that I'm asking about what issues I can fight for them. So, and especially as someone who's worked in the legislature directly and worked with senators and representatives since COVID, the interaction between constituents and elected officials has gone down significantly at the state level, especially from what I've seen. So that includes, that's something I'm very passionate about or want to have, are in-person and virtual town halls, office hours, meeting with community organizations, meeting them where they are at, also interacting with students and young adults, to encourage members in our district, especially young adults, to participate in the political process, as a lot of people don't feel like they see themselves in the process or in Olympia. And I want to create that opportunity for them and for them to be able to participate.
Thank you. Joe Bushnell.
Yeah, I think this is really important. As an elected official, you're there to serve the people that you represent, and that's regardless if they voted for you or not. I take that very seriously, and service to me, as I said, is very important. And service also means being able to reach out to the community that you're serving and hearing from them, whether they're engaged with the political process or not. Because any policy impacts all members of our community, either positively or negatively. And it's really important to make sure that stakeholdering is occurring, especially when there's impactful legislation that could impact a wide variety of folks. Accessibility is extremely important to me. As been mentioned before, my personal cell phone number is also on my website. It's 253-792-1857. Anybody can text or call anytime. And if I don't answer, leave a message. I'll get back to you. It's something that I've done since day one, since I've been in elected office. And I found that it's a really great use because people come to me when there's a serious problem and I want to know about it so I can help rectify it. If I don't have the solution, I want to try and help them find that solution. And so it's really important to be available for people at all hours of the day. And so I do town halls, but I also do office hours at different times of the day. I used to work second shift in a warehouse. And if you try to have me at a 5 o'clock meeting, I never would have made it. So it's really important to have different office hours for people, different lifestyles are able to reach you. And I'm always happy to have one-on-one constituent meetings, and I do very often with members of our district, and we'll continue to do so in the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Stickney.
Yes, thank you. I'll echo a lot of what has been said. Just being proactive and being out there is just really important across the board, and in different community spaces, building relationships and having those trusted relationships with community organizations and individuals. I think one thing that I do want to add too, though, is thinking about, like, there has been a longstanding issue in the legislature as an institution to be able to fund things like language access services. So if having a town hall being able to offer translation services for that conversation to happen in multiple languages has not been as supported as from the institution, and that for me I think is really important to on the technical level to be able to fight for, to make sure we are able to the legislature is able to fund that for members going out into their communities to make sure that folks can have access across the board. I also think having strong constituent services, making sure that folks can call, making sure those numbers are out there to be able to work through any sort of issues, is just really important. Making sure that the caseload is a really big part of the job, working through the issues with state agencies. And so in addition to those affirmative, proactive, my number is available on as well. I'm always happy to share it. There's ways to reach me, other ways to reach me too on my website. But yes, being out in the community, talking to folks and just, being available, being accessible, making sure that folks know who you are, and are always welcome to reach out is just really important.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Natasha Laitila. What do you think is the most important environmental issue in the state, and what legislation would you support to address it?
I was on mute. I think that is a great question. What I would say environmental issue would be, and there are many. I think what I would choose would be the lack of access to canopy and access to heat relief. So, especially in unincorporated Pierce County, where there are not a lot of third spaces, people can't afford AC units, and there's also very not a lot of trees as well. It's dangerous for neighbors to be able to walk down the street. So, something about addressing that with providing resources with canopy, increasing canopy in unincorporated Pierce County, increasing access to AC units. When housing is built, that there is requirements that basic necessities are implemented. And also when it comes to when there are heat advisory warnings, having those third spaces for especially our unhoused community to be able to access those. So I would say that is the biggest thing in our district, especially in Parkland and Midland.
Thank you. Joe Bushnell.
Thank you. I do believe that the biggest environmental issue that we're facing right now is greenhouse gas emissions. We have a lot of significant PM 2.5 all across our region, and particularly in the 29th legislative district, especially from diesel particulate. It's really important that we are focusing on greenhouse gas reductions all across the board, and it's not only is it just electrification, but also different fuel sources like hydrogen in order to bring those emission sources down, and making sure it does have a lot of knock-on health effects as well, because it contributes to cancer rates and other ailments in our community. And so it's really important that we have a just transition to electrification and other fuel sources that don't increase greenhouse gas emissions. I think it's really important that we utilize CCA dollars in order to make that transition happen. I really appreciate that we have that, but I don't think that the dollars are flowing appropriately, and I don't think they're flowing fast enough to the communities that are most impacted by these greenhouse gas emissions. I'm really proud to say the work that I've done on the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency. We did a comprehensive climate action plan that includes regionalization of greenhouse gas reductions across our region. And it is a blueprint for both local jurisdictions and the state to support greenhouse gas reductions across the board. And I think it's really great. I think it would be really good if the legislature and others jurisdictions would look at that to support that work and eliminate greenhouse gas emissions as much as we are able at the local level. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Stickney, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think environmental justice as a whole is the most important issue, is that we see communities that have a lot of industry continue to have that, and that creates some of these air impacts that we are seeing in terms of heavy traffic, diesel, other toxic emissions. And that is the case for the 29th. 3/4 of our census tracts rank 9 or 10 on the environmental health disparities map. And that is something that we really need to address. I think that part of that is better enforcement by the Department of Ecology. And I also think it's making sure that we are having programs that are done in a way that actually work for people. A rebate program doesn't really work if you're not able to spend the money in the first place to, improve your air quality, for example. So that's where I think just working through the environmental justice, framework, working through those steps to make sure that we are, citing things appropriately, making sure that we have good jobs, as well as clean air, clean water is really important. We don't have to pit those two against each other, and making sure we have those collective solutions is really important. And that for me is, really had that grateful to have the support of the Washington Conservation Action and the Environmental Coalition of Pierce County, really to make sure that we can have these collective solutions working together. And part of that, I think, is just making sure that implementation is able to be done appropriately, and making sure we pass the CURB Act so that if there are these cumulative impacts, we are able to then look at it a different way.
Thank you. Erin Chapman-Smith.
I also think, the unequal burden of pollution and air quality really is at the top of my list for environmental issues. So much of our district lives near highways, freight routes, in the industrial areas. And really for us to like really focus on how do we address those environmental policy impacts like at the ground level and really focus on the biggest sources of pollution first. So really focusing legislative dollars and regulation and enforcement on those major industrial like emitters and kind of the freight corridors instead of placing those costs to protect oneself on working families here in the district. So I think there's lots of ways we can do that, like electrifying the ports, warehouses, freight infrastructure, really working to reduce diesel pollution, heavy equipment, but also really making sure that we're thinking about the future and thinking about how do we actually meet the needs of the community as part of that work. So really looking at what does reliable transit look like across the community, not just the city hubs. And then, like was previously mentioned, really prioritizing home efficiency, making sure that our weatherization, our building codes are keeping up with the needs of the community, but also really having that environmental look forward as well.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Joe Bushnell. And what legislation would you propose or support to address homelessness?
Yeah, this is a really important question. And homelessness is something that it needs to be tackled at a regional level, at a statewide level. I'm really proud of the work that we've done at the local level to support those experiencing homelessness. 80% of homelessness services actually happens within the city of Tacoma. I think it's really important that the state find ways to support local partners all across the region to have regional efforts to make sure that there's accountability flowing in the right way when it comes to resourcing. Unfortunately, there's some coalitions that are falling apart. You don't have to look too far to the north where you see that there's some mistrust and mismanagement of funds, and that really is to the detriment of folks that are most impacted by those funding needs. And I think it's really important that the state has a framework for what a regional collaboration could look like and to support those regional collaborations. I think that homelessness is an issue all across the state, and it's not just in any one specific jurisdiction. And we need to try and make sure to support people where they're at, particularly with the communities they come from, because they have more likely to have the support network, the family that might be able to continue to support them. Unfortunately, there's disparate service levels all across our state, and they tend to be concentrated in very specific areas, which exacerbates existing problems. And so I'd like to find some legislation to bring forward that would help the regionalization and supporting regionalization of homelessness efforts all across our area, and centralized data collection as well as implementation of programs that are equitable across our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Stickney.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say this is something that the city has not been able to solve, and so we really need strong solutions from the state to be able to address this. I think a big thing is making sure that we are doing things earlier. The current system of shuffling people around just doesn't actually address homelessness. So I think it's making sure that we are able to do things like provide target rental assistance, for example, when someone loses their job, so that we're able to then, if someone's unemployment doesn't really match up with their housing payment, making sure that we can target those resources earlier so that folks are able to get through that tough time, don't go through that cycle, and then get deeper in that hole where it's really harder to address this situation. I think it's really important. The same with substance use support, mental health support, doing things as early as possible, finding the way to be able to, address these situations, have the resources to make sure that folks don't fall through the cracks. And I think that is really important. A lot of that is funding, and I think part of that is where can we have that information in place and really the availability for those quick response services, as well as working closely with our county and other local governments as well, to make sure that we're able to have this unified approach.
Thank you, Erin Chapman-Smith.
Yeah. Well, uh, such a large issue, and I think kind of narrowing it down is actually challenging because there's so much that goes into it. I think homelessness is often looked at kind of like a pillar on its own, but it's so intertwined with every other issue in our community. So I think to address that, you actually have to address homelessness through prevention and really look at it as an infrastructure issue, not a standalone issue. So really making sure that we're having, as part of like our legislative processes, building like statewide homelessness prevention standards so that we are making sure that folks aren't entering homelessness at the rates that we're seeing now. So, you know, from foster care, from schools, from hospitals, we're seeing all of those as entry points to homelessness, and we can do a better job as a state of preventing that. It is cheaper and more humane to keep someone housed than to rebuild their life from the ground up. And so it also helps reduce the overall state deficit. I think that is also a look at preventing or strengthening eviction prevention, making sure that our foster care system, juvenile justice system, behavioral health system are all working together, really codifying McKinney-Vento protections here in the state. We can't trust the federal administration. We see that every day. And so making sure that we've got strong McKinney-Vento protections here in Washington, and also reducing barriers to shelter and making sure that our frontline workers have wages that match the work that they're doing.
Thank you. Natasha Laitila.
Yes, so I would say to address homelessness, it's a very complex, multifaceted issue. And how we are approaching it right now is more of a reaction, and legislation that we can have at the state level will have to be, in order to properly address this, is prevention, intervention, and collaboration. So it is more economically feasible, and we save money in the long run when we are able to help individuals and families, preventing them from from losing their housing in the first place, rather than helping them get back into housing once they lose it. Also, this is a behavioral health crisis, a public safety crisis, as well as an affordability crisis. So really looking into how can we build more affordable housing, more different types of housing, making sure that families get access to resources that they need, because once you are in crisis, it's harder to get out of crisis once you fall into it. Also, making sure we work on a more multi-level governance approach at the state level, county level, and municipal level, as well as across the board. So having law enforcement work with behavioral health specialists, other nonprofit organizations, in order to provide these resources, these programmings, which we could then further fund at the state level.
Thank you so much. We've come to our last question. This is a modified audience question, and we'll start with Patrick Stickney on this one. If elected, how will you measure whether you have been successful by the end of your first term? Give examples of bills you hope to pass.
Yeah, thank you. I think part of it is there is a number of bills passed, but it's also the impact. I think a lot of the times we look at what the amount that we do, not the impact that we're having in passing legislation, getting the funding that we need. So for me, it's really our folks' lives better here in the 29th legislative district and across the state. I think that is doing things like working to pass bans on surveillance pricing so our data isn't used to charge us more for things at the grocery store, making sure that we are going after hidden fees, making sure we're really tackling the lack of competition that is raising prices for us, and making sure that we are, doing everything we can to have more housing choices for folks. So I think really thinking about the impact is important, and making sure that it is able to meet what folks are seeing on the ground and people are having a material difference in their lives. I think that is why a lot of folks are disaffected from the process, is that one, they don't know how to get involved, and when they do get involved, they don't see the changes that they really would like to see in our community. So I think, having that better connection, reducing isolation in our communities, and making sure that we are able to bring that solid foundation so that folks can not just survive, but thrive.
Thank you. Erin Chapman-Smith. If elected, how will you measure whether you've been successful at the end of your first term? Give examples of bills you hope you will pass.
Yeah, I also echo that I think it actually comes down to impact and not like number of bills. I think what I would judge being successful is as I'm hearing from community members and constituents that their life is easier, safer, more affordable. And I think there's a lot of different bills that can get at that. I think really working to have some work on like medical debt protection, like we've heard before, really making sure that there's legislative protecting the community around predatory pricing, but also algorithmic rent setting is a new trend that is driving up housing costs. So really working to ban that. And then really making sure that our systems are working well together. So, really making sure that going back to the homelessness question, right? Like that we're thinking about, legislation that doesn't just ban kind of state entities from like foster care from being an entry point into homelessness, but we're providing enforcement, we're providing the actual resources to do that. I think representation also really matters in this race. It's the only openly LGBTQ member of this race too. I would judge that to be part of my successful time in the legislation is just being available to the LGBTQ community. And if elected, I would be the first transgender legislator in Washington state history. And so really making sure that we're reaching out to all communities and making sure that people see and hear themselves in their community and that those issues being brought to the state.
Thank you. Natasha Laitila, how would you measure whether you've been successful?
From the thousands of conversations that I've had with residents throughout this campaign, I would say there are a few things. One is addressing affordability, as that is the biggest thing that residents talk about and they're concerned about. So addressing on access to groceries and also other resources. So making sure that they don't have to travel as far or they don't for groceries or to access benefits, especially in Parkland and Midland, where there is a resource desert. Another thing is to prevent the cut of funding for really important programming like after school or summer programming, which studies show improve students' ability to perform in school and also reduces community violence. And that further exacerbates when those funds are cut, access to these resources for our kids. Another thing is to improve participation in the political process, and whether it's people coming down to Olympia, speaking with elected officials, also voting. So I would like to address the on making it more lowering the making it more easier to understand ballots, for example. So addressing the language, as everyone is not a native English speaker or have the same reading levels. So something around that as well.
Thank you. Joe Bushnell.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I'd utilize data. There's a lot of information and data out there, and we have a lot of metrics that we can utilize to measure success. And so I really do believe in data-driven solutions, especially in areas like ours where we have seen some of the lowest health outcomes, lowest voter turnout, and a lot of other disparate numbers. So we really need to make sure that whatever policies that we're crafting are supporting our community, and we can utilize those numbers because they're plain as day to say, hey, we need the resources in this community right here, right now. And it's really important that we continue to support folks to make sure that they have money in their pocket to feed their families, to be able to go on a vacation once a year. Right now, people are not able to afford even that. Access to healthcare is extremely important right now, and it's becoming harder and harder every single day, especially with this federal administration acting and behaving and doing the things that it's doing, as well as making sure that members of our community feel safe. Community safety is a vital concern for all members of our community, our immigrant community, LGBTQI2 plus community, as well as other members of our community. And we need to make sure that they're feeling safe in their homes. They're able to walk in their neighborhood and feel safe as well. We have infrastructure needs all across this district. Places where we have children walking on street when walking to the school, it's unacceptable. And we have people just in the last few days in the city of Tacoma alone, we've had over 3 fatalities, traffic fatalities. And so it's really important that people are feeling safe and that we are being safe, especially with our infrastructure. So those things that I would focus on, and not necessarily number of bills, because I think that's.
Thank you. Thank you. Now it's time for closing statements. Each candidate has up to 1 minute for their closing statement. We will change the order of the opening statement, so we will start with Erin Chapman-Smith. Your 1-minute statement, please.
Thank you again for the opportunity to connect tonight. I think my campaign is a little unique. I'm not coming from a political background. I'm coming from 20 years of working with legislative bodies across Washington, but also across the country to really help governments understand the policies that they are putting in place, how they impact folks in the real world. So I'm really excited to be able to bring that experience forward, really make sure that we're focusing on our constituents, really making a difference when it comes to healthcare, our education systems, really addressing homelessness, really addressing the mental health crisis that we find our community in. So really looking to bring that practical experience and representation to this race and to Olympia. And again, thank you so much for the incredible questions and opportunity to share more.
Thank you. Natasha Laitila, please.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to speak tonight. As someone who born and raised in the district, and being able to run is surreal and is something that I don't take lightly. And the 29th legislative district is a district that often gets forgotten. And also a lot of people don't understand the unique needs of the district because of its incorporated and unincorporated parts. And as someone who born and raised here, understanding deeply about the policies that have been implemented here, and also dedicating my professional career to understanding how policy is implemented at the state level at various levels is something that I want to bring this expertise. As someone who resigned from her job in order to run because of the Hatch Act and has knocked on thousands of doors, I hope to earn the support of the residents and to strengthen representation here.
Thank you. Joe Bushnell, please.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this forum, and I really appreciate all the folks that have been paying attention to this and are watching it now. I really believe in service as the highest calling a person can make, and that's why I rose my right hand and swore an oath to the Constitution as a Marine. I continued that service at the local level, volunteering with our neighborhood council and other community organizations, having been on the TP board as well. And I want to continue that service here at the legislature. I really think it's important that we continue to lead with integrity, especially given the political climate that we are facing, and that we have people that are in service to our community, for our community, and that knows our community. I'm really proud to have the endorsements of Jake Fye in 27th LD, Don Bernowski from the 28th, our former state senator who sat in the seat a long time ago, former state senator Rosa Franklin, Steve Kirby, Connie Ladenburg, statewide office holders like Pat McCarthy and Steve Hobbs, our Tacoma mayor, many other unions and other organizations. And I really hope that you can support me, and I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Stickney, please.
Thank you, and just want to echo really grateful to be here tonight. We've talked a lot about the challenges that are facing the district and our state, but I also wanted to take a moment to talk about our assets. We are a resilient, creative, and diverse community, and we are stronger for it. And I think that that's really where there's a lot of hope and really a lot ability for us to make a difference. Politics is a team sport, both in legislative session and on the campaign trail. No person can do it alone, and so we might have great challenges, and there may be a lot of work to do, not just to reverse or minimize what we're seeing across our state, but also to create something new and something better. And so with that, we can do that together. Together, we can build a stronger and better future, not just for the 29th, but across our state. And really, with my experience as a legislative and policy advisor who has worked with legislators, legislative staff, and state agencies, really ready to hit the ground running to make sure that we can, fight for what we need to fight for. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. The candidates for LD 29, position 2, are Derek Blum, Patrick Stickney, Erin Chapman-Smith, Natasha Laitila, Sherry Hayes, and Joe Bushnell. Your ballot will be mailed to you on July 14th. Be sure to vote early and no later than August 4th. I'd like to thank the candidates who participated and the timekeeper, Terry Baker, and the Tacoma-Pierce County League of Women Voters. You can see this candidate forum and other candidate forums at lwvtpc.org. That's lwvtpc.org. Read your voters pamphlet and read the candidates' websites. And don't forget to vote before August 4th. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.